Back in high school, I spent months trying to understand the college admissions process. I would scour online forums, I would watch videos, I would email my guidance counselor, I would even read books. And the truth is, a lot of the best information about college applications is scattered all across the internet. It was very hard to find one source that broke down the process in enough detail. Well, lucky for you, that's why I'm making this video today. We're gonna cover how to actually apply to college. We're gonna break down 6 main stages: creating your college list, starting your actual application, writing college essays, getting letters of rec, applying for financial aid, and then finally submitting your application. So let's dive right in. The first part of the college application process is building your college list. And you generally want to do this the summer before your senior year or even the spring of your junior year. So the US has over 4,000 colleges. And the purpose of this stage is to find the few colleges that are the best fit for you. So now you might be wondering, Gohar, how many colleges should I actually apply to? You're gonna get a variety of answers, but I think the safe ballpark is anywhere between 6 to 12 schools. And you want to split up your college list into 3 buckets. You want safety schools, match schools, and reach schools. Now the reason you want these 3 buckets is because you want to make sure that you're applying to some schools that you know you have a good chance of getting into. You don't want to be the one kid that applies to every single school in the top 20 and nothing else and gets rejected from everywhere. Trust me, I have seen this happen a few times. So safety schools are colleges where your academic credentials, namely your GPA, SAT, or ACT score, fall well above the 75th percentile. Match schools are colleges where your academic credentials fall within the middle 50th percentile. And reach schools are schools where your academic credentials fall below the 25th percentile. Now before you go ahead and call Harvard a safety because you have a 1600 on your SAT, I do want to add one caveat. Every single Ivy League school is a reach school, no matter what grades you have. For the Ivy League, and honestly every school in the top 20, your grades and academic credentials are just the threshold to being considered. It's your extracurriculars, letters of rec, essays, and awards that'll actually get you into these schools. The top 20 schools are reaches for everyone, no matter your grades or accomplishments. Okay, so now let's break down the numbers. Ideally, you want around 3 safeties, 4 to 5 matches, and around 2 to 3 reaches. Now, I'll be honest, this is the standard breakdown that most consultants or even your guidance counselor will give you, but I'm gonna let you in on a little unfortunate secret. Many students, especially those with top grades, apply to way more than just 2 to 3 reaches. In recent years, there's been a phenomenon called shotgunning, where many top students will apply to almost every single Ivy League school or a bunch of schools in the top 20. These students care much more about prestige than about whether or not a certain school is the right fit for them, and so that's why they'll just apply to every prestigious school they can think of. Now, should you do this? Well, it's up to you. I'm not gonna sit here and tell you to not do it because I would be a hypocrite. Back in high school, I was that kid who applied to a bunch of Ivy League schools, and I'll be honest, I wasn't just chasing the prestige. Top schools, and especially Ivy League schools, have great financial aid programs, and I knew that I really wanted to benefit from one of them. Alright, so now that we've broken down what the composition of your college list should look like, let's go ahead and talk about the different factors that you should consider when deciding which colleges to apply to. So there are a bunch of variables that come into play here, and I'll go ahead and break each of them down briefly. You have things like location, extracurricular opportunities, majors and minors offered, cost, climate, and so much more. I highly recommend that you pull out a sheet of paper and write down the criteria that you're looking for in the colleges that you're applying to. And if you're too lazy to do that, don't worry, I have a worksheet in the description of this video. So first and foremost, you want to consider the size of the college. Large colleges will have more academic and extracurricular opportunities, but these colleges might feel a bit impersonal and a bit too overwhelming for some students. Smaller colleges, on the other hand, might be limited in the amount of clubs or programs or majors that they offer, but you will get more of that tight-knit and cozy college experience. What you want is totally up to you. Personally, I didn't want to go to too small of a college, so I was opting for something more medium-sized or larger. Now, besides the physical size of the college and the number of students at the school, you also want to consider class size. You want to see whether the college offers more lecture-style classes with hundreds of students, or more seminar-style classes with just a few dozen. With lecture-style classes, you'll have way less access to your professors, and your learning will be a lot more self-directed. On the other hand, seminar-style classes are a lot more intimate and hands-on, and they'll give you a lot more access to your professors. Now, the reality is, a lot of colleges have a mix of both of these, but it does help to look into whether or not a certain school leans one way or the other. A statistic I highly recommend you look up is the student to faculty ratio. Okay, so the second thing that you want to consider is location. Now there are a couple of variables when it comes to location. You want to consider urban versus rural, distance from home, and climate. Urban college campuses will give you more opportunities, particularly when it comes to jobs or internships. For example, if you're interviewing for internships during the school year, you might be able to do in-person interviews or even stop by the various offices. A more suburban or rural college campus will not give you this privilege. But to be honest, that's not too big of a deal because you could simply work a remote internship or do remote interviews. So I think the main factor that you want to consider is that urban college campuses tend to be more lively and fun, in my opinion. If you want lots of people around you, if you want some sightseeing opportunities, if you want nice restaurants or food options, then an urban college campus will definitely give you that, whereas a rural one might not. However, I do think rural college campuses are great for certain types of students. For example, if you enjoy nature or if you want something more peaceful and quiet, then by all means opt for these more peaceful environments. And when it comes to location, you also want to consider distance from home. If you live on the East Coast but you go to college on the West Coast, chances are you will only see your family on the holidays. Whereas if you go to college within the same state, you might see your family once a month or even once a week. Trust me, there are quite a few freshmen that visit home pretty often. And of course, the most important variable that you want to consider when it comes to location is climate. Just a fair warning, all the Ivies are located in the Northeast, so be ready for some frigid winters. Back when I was in college, I will never forget this one time I went out to get dinner with my friends, and I honestly thought my face was gonna freeze and fall off. December in Boston is not a good time. Now, the next variable that you wanna consider is the available programs. You wanna look deep into the different majors and minors certain colleges offer. For example, if you're really into cybersecurity or biotechnology, not every school offers programs in those fields. So dig deep, do your research, and make sure you're applying to schools that actually will teach you the things you want to learn. And then another variable you want to consider is the flexibility of the curriculum. Some colleges have a required set of core classes that you will have to take no matter what, whereas other colleges will give you the opportunity to sort of craft your own curriculum. One example that comes to mind is Brown's open curriculum, which is very flexible and lets students craft their own academic journeys. And then of course you also want to consider the reputation of the programs at the school. If you want to go into fields like finance or consulting, the reputation of not only the program but also the school matters a lot, whereas if you want to go into a field like tech, the reputation of your school doesn't matter as much. Tech companies will pay more attention to your actual skills and the projects you've completed. Alright, the next variable you want to consider is campus culture. Now, the culture of a college campus is heavily influenced by the diversity of the student body, not only in terms of ethnicity or race, but also in terms of academic interest, in terms of political ideology, and a handful of other variables. So make sure you're going to a school whose culture aligns with your values. Now, you also want to consider things like the social scene or traditions. One thing that I would do a lot in high school is I would just watch vlogs about certain colleges just to get a sense of what the students were like. And let me tell you right now, if you are considering MIT, we have a fantastic hacker culture. Essentially, it's pretty much tradition at MIT for students to pull off different hacks throughout the school year. In years past, students have put Captain America's shield on the dome, they've put an ambulance on the dome, they've put R2-D2 on the dome. As you can tell, MIT students love to put things on top of the dome. So yeah, I recommend that you look into these sorts of cultures and traditions at different schools and see which ones vibe with you. And one last but very important element of campus culture is residential life. Be sure to look into the dorms that are offered at the schools you're interested in and look into the sort of housing/residential system they have. Harvard, for example, has all students living pretty close to each other freshman year. They all live in dorms that are adjacent to the Harvard yard, but in later years they go off into their own housing units. Alright, we're almost done here. I know we're going through a bunch of different variables right now, but the next thing that you want to consider are the extracurricular opportunities offered at the school. Look into the sports that are offered, look into the different clubs and organizations, look into any internship or co-op or study abroad programs. Your college experience is not just going to be defined by the classes you take and the things you learn, but also by the people that you meet and the circumstances that you meet them in. If you're super into competitive programming, maybe you want to see if the school has a competitive programming club. If you're really into recreational sports, well, that's an important thing to look into. On the bright side, I find that most colleges offer dozens, if not hundreds of different clubs and extracurricular opportunities, and if you don't find the exact opportunity that you want, a lot of these schools will let you start it yourself. Okay, and finally, one of the most important variables that you should consider when applying to college is cost. For every school that you're considering, I recommend searching up its name followed by net price calculator on Google. You'll get redirected to a link where you'll be able to input your family's financial information and get an estimate for the amount of financial aid that you might receive. These numbers are not going to be 100% accurate, but they'll give you a pretty good idea of what your family might have to pay out of pocket. And as you're considering cost, I also want you to consider if the school offers any merit-based scholarships or has need-based aid. A merit-based scholarship is essentially money that a school will throw at you for having a certain GPA, SAT score, or ACT score. Need-based aid is financial aid that a school will give you based on the income level of your family. And just a heads up, the Ivy League offers fantastic need-based aid, even for international students. And as you're crunching the numbers for these different schools, I also recommend that you calculate the ROI, or the return on investment, of the different schools you're considering. Look at your expected cost, look at the expected salary of the degree that you want to major in, and see if you think going to that college and pursuing that certain degree is a worthwhile investment on your money. I'll provide a worksheet that you can use to calculate ROI in the description of this video. Alright, so now that you've written down and understand the different things that you're looking for in colleges, it's time to actually start finding different colleges that meet these criteria. Now you can use a bunch of different tools to search for colleges, but before I dive into any of them, I highly recommend that you go to Google Drive and create a sheet to keep track of all the schools you're interested in. Now, if you're too lazy to go ahead and make this table yourself, once again, I have a template in the description of this video. Okay, so one of my favorite tools for finding colleges is College Board's College Search. So if you go ahead and Google College Board College Search, you'll see a page like this, and you can search for colleges based on many different variables. For example, location, majors, type, campus life, and so on. But of course, this isn't the only tool that you have to use. You can also attend college fairs, talk to your guidance counselor, you can talk to friends and family members about schools they would recommend for you, and you can even talk to my team over at Next Admit. You can book a consultation call with one of our consultants, and they would be happy to help you find different colleges. Okay, so as you're building out this table of different colleges and keeping track of variables like cost, location, majors, extracurriculars, and so on, you should also identify the requirements for each of these schools. Look into whether or not the school requires you to take the SAT or the ACT. Figure out whether the school recommends you take a specific high school curriculum. For example, if you search up a school's name followed by recommended high school courses, you'll usually find a webpage that lists the classes the college expects you to take during your 4 years in high school. For example, on this webpage on Harvard's website, they recommend that you take 4 years of math courses in high school. And then on top of course requirements, you also want to see if the school has any supplemental essays, allows you to submit a portfolio, or requires you to submit something special. For example, Princeton requires students to submit a graded English paper. Dartmouth highly recommends that students submit a peer recommendation. Different schools have different requirements, so just make sure you're keeping track of them in your table. Oh, and by the way, if you want to learn about these supplemental essays for the Ivies and want to understand how to answer them, check out the articles I've linked in the description of this video. Okay, so now you should have a table with a bunch of different colleges and a lot of information. It's time to narrow your college list. Now, you can do this in a variety of ways, but I highly recommend that you consider visiting the schools or attending virtual info sessions or tours. And as you're doing all of this, make sure that you're taking as many notes as you possibly can so you can narrow down your college list. Finally, once you have your narrowed list, you want to figure out if you want to apply early anywhere. So most colleges have two deadlines. They have an early deadline and a regular deadline. The early deadline is usually November 1st, and the regular deadline is usually around January 1st. Now, applying early comes with a handful of advantages. The biggest one being that you can end the college admissions process pretty early. If you get into your dream school mid-December, congrats, you don't really have to worry about your regular decision applications. But on top of that, applying early also shows a college that you're particularly interested in attending, which might give you a slight admissions boost. The extent of this boost, even if there is one at all, is usually highly debated, but for most schools, I think it's safe to assume that it helps just a little bit. Okay, so when it comes to applying early, you have three different kinds of early applications. You have early action, early decision, and restrictive early action. So the main difference between early action and early decision is that early action is non-binding, whereas early decision is binding. In other words, if you get in through an early decision program, you are required to go to that school. On the other hand, if you get in through an early action program, you can still choose whether or not you want to go to that school. And restrictive early action is just a weirder version of early action. Essentially, restrictive early action prevents you from applying early to multiple schools at once. For example, if you apply early to Harvard, You can't also apply early to Princeton and Yale. But the vast majority of schools don't have restrictive early action, so you probably don't have to worry about it too much. And just a quick side note, if you're planning to apply early to a school and want to submit your test scores, I recommend wrapping up your SATs and your ACTs the summer before senior year. And with all of that, we have wrapped up the first part of this video, which is building your college list. The next part of the college application process is starting your actual application. Now, generally you'll do this in August when all the college applications open up. And before you go ahead and start working on your actual applications, I highly recommend that you create a separate email address for everything college admissions related. During the college application process, you're going to get a ton of messages from the Common App, from different colleges and other sources. And ultimately, you don't want these important messages getting lost or mixed up in your current inbox. So when you're applying to college, you can apply through several different platforms. You have the Common Application, the Coalition Application, and you have QuestBridge. There are some other options as well, but these are the three most popular ones. QuestBridge is mainly targeted towards low-income students, but it is a fantastic program that I highly recommend students look into. And when it comes to the Common App versus the Coalition App, the Common App is a lot more popular, and chances are that 99% of you watching are going to apply through the Common App. So let's take a quick tour of the Common App and see how you actually fill out your college application. So if you go to commonapp.org, you'll see a page that looks like this. I recommend that you click on create an account and start your account as early as possible. Chances are most of you want to click on first year student and then just go through the normal registration process. But since I already have a dummy account, let me go ahead and log in and show you what this looks like. So when you log into the Common App, this is what you'll see. You'll see a dashboard that lists all the colleges that you're applying to. You'll see a My Colleges tab, a Common App tab, a College Search tab, and then a Financial Aid tab. So pretty much all the work is going to happen between these two tabs, My Colleges and the Common App. So within the My Colleges tab is where you're going to write all of your supplemental essays and answer any college-specific questions. For example, this right here is a supplemental essay for Brown, 200 to 250 words, and you can write it right here in this box. But I highly recommend you don't do this right away. I recommend that you create a separate Google Doc that has all of your supplemental essays and activity descriptions. Once you have finished your essays in the separate document and once you're happy with them, copy them over to the Common Application so you can submit. Yes, the Common App does save your answers, but I think you're much safer just writing everything in a separate doc. Okay, and then under the Common App tab is where you'll have all of your general questions about you, your family, education, testing, and so on. And it's in this tab that you will write your activity descriptions and your Common App essay. Once again, save everything in a separate Google Doc first. Now, there is a special part of the Common Application that I want to highlight. So if you go to the Common App tab and go to the writing section and scroll all the way down, you will see a box titled Additional Information. Now, many people recommend that you don't write too much in the additional information section, and I agree, but I think this is a fantastic spot to tell admissions officers about any extenuating circumstances, forced conflicts, special classes you've taken, and so on. Back when I was applying to college, I even used this to list some additional awards and activities I wasn't able to list on my main application. But above all else, I kept this section very short and concise. Okay, so now here's one of the harsh realities of the college application process. Submitting applications costs money. Nowadays, the average college application costs anywhere between $50 to $80 to submit, and if you're applying to 10 plus schools, the cost can rack up pretty quickly. Well, fortunately, the Common App offers something called the Common App Fee Waiver, which might let you apply to college for free. I highly recommend that you search up Common App Fee Waiver, click on the first result, and then you'll see the eligibility requirements for getting a Common App Fee Waiver. And this page also has more information about how to get your fee waiver, whether international students are eligible, and what you should do if you don't meet the fee waiver criteria. Okay, so now let's move on to part 3 of today's video, college essays. College essays are one of the most important parts of your college application because they are where your voice shines through. Every other part of your college application is more numbers based or is pretty objective. For example, your test scores, your transcript, your GPA, these don't really give a sense of your personality and character. And ultimately, as admissions officers are building their classes, they want to understand the kinds of students they're accepting. So imagine your college essay as the one opportunity you have to sit in front of your admissions officer and tell your story. So the reality is there are different kinds of college essays you will have to write during the process. You have the personal statement, and then you have supplemental essays. The personal statement is a college essay that will go to all the schools that you're applying to. You may also hear me and others refer to it as the Common App essay. Supplemental essays, on the other hand, are school-specific essays that you will have to submit for each individual college. The reality is, the college essay process is very nuanced, and I can make over a dozen videos just about college essays. And that's exactly what I'm doing. I'm soon launching something called the College Essay Bootcamp that'll take you from start to finish on your college essay. But I will go ahead and give you my high-level pieces of advice for the college essay. Tip number 1, which you have probably heard thousands of times already, is show, don't tell. The college essay is ultimately a story where you are the main character. You don't just want to tell admissions officers I'm hardworking or I like computer science. You want to tell an evocative and immersive story that engages the admissions officer. For example, instead of just saying that you love computer science, maybe you can write about the experience of building an app from scratch. And as you're telling the story, you want to make sure that you keep your writing conversational. The college essay is not a research paper, it's not some formal piece of writing. You can use contractions, and you should feel free to adapt a relaxed tone. Next, make sure you don't rehash your resume. The college essay is not a place to tell the admissions officer about all your accomplishments. That's what your activities list and your honors list is for. The point of the college essay is to convey your character, worldview, and values to the admissions officer. So focus just on one of your interests or one of your experiences that can convey something like leadership or intellectual curiosity. It also helps to ask yourself, so what, as you're writing your essay. For example, if you tell a story about building an app, so what? Why should an admissions officer accept you? Does the admissions officer believe you're going to come to their campus and make strides in their computer science department? Do they believe you might go on to find a very successful startup one day? It helps to think about how the reader of your essay perceives you and your potential. And so that's why it's also very important to get feedback on your college essay. Ask your English teacher, ask your guidance counselor, and maybe even ask a friend or a family member. But chances are they might not give you super detailed line-by-line advice. They might just say, oh yeah, this is a good essay, you should submit it. Or maybe they'll say, oh, this doesn't sound like you and you should try something else. So if you want very detailed line-by-line feedback, edits, and an overall review of your college essay, check out NextAdmit's essay review service. We have a team of Ivy League consultants who would be happy to give you in-depth feedback. Okay, next, let's talk about letters of recommendation. So when you apply to college, you will have to submit 3 recommendation letters, 1 from your guidance counselor and 2 from your teachers. These recommendation letters are essentially speaking to your character, accomplishments, academic ability, and they help admissions officers get an outside perspective on the kind of student you are. It's one thing to write an essay and say that you're intellectually curious. It's another to have your teacher tell an admissions officer that you're intellectually curious. I think it's best to ask teachers for letters of rec sometime in October, and make sure you're asking teachers ideally from junior year and those who have seen you interact in a classroom context. Make sure the teachers you ask are those that you know very well and those who can attest to your redeeming qualities. I highly recommend you ask your teachers in person so you can gauge their enthusiasm. Obviously, the best letters are going to come from the teachers who are very excited to write one for you. Also, very important to note, try to ask only junior year teachers. You could ask a sophomore year teacher if you really can't think of anyone else, but you do not want to ask any freshman year teachers for a letter of rec. Chances are they probably can't speak much to who you are today. And finally, after you ask your teachers for letters of rec, it helps to give them something called a brag sheet. A brag sheet is a list of your accomplishments, activities, anecdotes from the classroom that can help your teacher write an outstanding letter. I have a brag sheet template that you can use and fill out in the description of this video. Okay, next, let's briefly talk about financial aid, which is a very important part of the application process. Most of you will want to fill out something called the FAFSA, which opens up October 1st. This is an application for federal financial aid. Some schools might also require you to fill out something called the CSS profile, which provides a more nuanced look into your family's financial circumstances. To see whether or not a school requires the CSS profile, you can just search up a school's name, followed by financial aid requirements. I might make a video or a guide about the FAFSA and CSS sometime in the future, so let me know if that would be helpful. A tool that I like to use to find scholarships is the College Board Scholarship Search. Here it is. You can use this tool to find matches from over 6,000 programs. And the great part is this tool will help you find scholarships based on your interests, situations, affiliations, and so on. Okay, so now let's move on to one of the final parts of this video, submitting your application. So now you want to make sure that you have submitted everything that is required of you. And let me go ahead and read off a small checklist that might be helpful. All parts of your Common App, teacher recommendations, counselor recommendation, and secondary school report, transcript, fee waiver or application fee, and test scores. And obviously for some schools, test scores are optional. Make sure to submit whatever you can, and then follow up with your guidance counselor to see if they've submitted everything else. So a few days after you've applied to all these colleges, they will send you individual links for their application portals. And you can access these portals to track all of your application requirements and see what has been submitted. And on these portals, you might see something called the mid-year report. Now here's the thing, after you apply to college, these schools will still see your senior year grades. They'll ask for your mid-year report, which will reveal your performance halfway through senior year, and then the school that you choose to attend will also want to see your final transcript to see if you maintained your grades. So by all means, try to fight off senioritis. Now something else that I want to flag are interviews. A few weeks after you apply to a college, an alumnus might reach out to you asking to schedule an interview. Now, not every school does interviews, but many of them in the top 20 do. Now, college interviews are surprisingly casual. They're just conversations between you and someone who has gone to the school, and you should see them as an opportunity to learn more about the school and to ask any questions you have. Now, once these are over and a few months have gone by, it is finally time for decisions. So now if you applied early to a school, you probably already got your decisions mid-December, but for the schools you applied regular to, you're going to get your decisions back in March or April. Now, if you applied early, you'll either be accepted, deferred, or rejected. If you applied regular, you'll either be accepted, waitlisted, or rejected. A deferral is simply a college's way of saying we haven't made a decision on you, and your application will be reevaluated during the regular decision round. Getting waitlisted essentially means that a college is going to wait to see who accepts their offers, and then based on how much room is left, they might take some students off the waitlist. Now, once you get your offers, it's very important that you compare them with one another and find the best fit for you. You will probably want to visit the colleges if you haven't done so already, and if you find that a school is too expensive or isn't giving you enough financial aid, just know that you can submit a financial aid appeal letter. This is essentially a request for more money from a college, and I'll link a template in the description of this video. And after you've played this comparison game and figured out which college is the best fit for you, it's time to lock in and commit to a college on May 1st, which is National College Decision Day. After that, you might have to submit a deposit or sign up for orientation, but largely that should wrap up the college application process. Now, I hope this video helped, and if it did, it would mean the world if you could share it with other seniors who are going through the admissions process. And if you want to hop on a call or get an essay review from me or my team, once again, you can find us over at Next Admin. Best of luck getting through the college application season, and just know that I'm here rooting for you.